Tristan Reed squinted through the cracked viewport of his scout vessel as alarms blared around him. The collision with the asteroid fragment had been sudden and devastating, tearing through his ship's hull and leaving critical systems damaged beyond repair. The navigation console flickered weakly, displaying his rapidly deteriorating trajectory toward an uncharted planet below. Emergency protocol engaged. The ship's AI announced with unsettling calm. Atmospheric entry imminent. Survival probability, 37%. Tristan gritted his teeth and strapped himself firmly into the pilot's seat. Just what I needed on a routine reconnaissance mission, he muttered, activating the emergency landing protocols. The scout ship shuddered violently as it breached the planet's atmosphere, flames licking at the damaged hull. His communication system crackled with static before a partial message came through. Scout Vessel Hermes, this is command. Your distress signal received. Planet designation, Relora. Classified as extreme hazard environment. Repeat, do not. The transmission cut off abruptly as the ship plummeted toward the surface. The landing, or more accurately, the crash, was brutal. Impact shock absorbers saved Tristan's life, but the scout vessel was beyond salvage. When the dust settled and emergency systems stabilized the cabin atmosphere, Tristan ran a quick medical self-assessment. 2 cracked ribs, minor lacerations, but nothing life-threatening. His training had prepared him for crash landings, but not for what came next. As night fell on this alien world, Tristan accessed what remained of the ship's database. The fragmentary information on Relora painted a grim picture. A hostile biosphere with predatory fauna, atmospheric composition barely compatible with human physiology, and intense seasonal variations in ecosystem behavior. One detail in particular caught his attention. Warning, Relora currently in native mating season. All indigenous species exhibit heightened aggression and territorial behavior during this period. Outside the shattered hull of his vessel, strange howls and the beating of massive wings echoed in the darkness. Tristan checked his survival kit. Emergency oxygen supply, nutrition packs, water purifier, medical supplies, and a standard-issue pulse rifle with limited ammunition. The ship's emergency beacon was transmitting, but he was far off his scheduled flight path. Rescue, if it came at all, will be weeks away. Staying here isn't an option, he told himself, studying the rudimentary topographical scans of the surrounding area. His oxygen would last longer inside the ship, but without power, the vessel would soon become a freezing metal coffin as night temperatures plummeted. Deeper in the database, he found mention of an indigenous civilization on Relora, an intelligent species that had once established contact with Alliance explorers. The information was decades old and marked unconfirmed, but it represented his best hope for survival. Tristan secured his survival gear, checked his weapon, and prepared to venture into the alien wilderness. As the airlock hissed open, he got his first real view of Relora, a landscape bathed in the eerie light of 2 moons, wind howling across jagged rock formations, and strange, luminescent spores drifting through the air. His helmet's filters immediately detected toxins in the atmosphere. Not immediately lethal, but prolonged exposure would cause respiratory damage. One step at a time, Tristan said to himself, activating his helmet lights and stepping onto the hostile soil of Relora. Just stay alive until extraction. As he trudged away from the crash site, a single question haunted him. Was anything intelligent still living on this nightmare of a planet? The first few hours of Tristan's journey across Relora's barren landscape proved that the planet deserved its extreme hazard classification. Cutting winds carried abrasive particles that slowly eroded his environmental suit's outer layer. The terrain alternated between razor-sharp rock formations and patches of bizarre vegetation, plant-like organisms that recoiled at his approach, releasing clouds of spores. His helmet's atmospheric analyzer continued to issue warnings about the toxic compounds in the air. Tristan rationed his oxygen supply, using it only when the external toxicity reached dangerous levels. The gravity was slightly stronger than Earth standard, making each step more laborious than the last. Dawn brought no relief. The system star rose over the horizon, bathing the landscape in harsh, red-tinged light. In the distance, Tristan spotted a forest of towering, bone-white structures that resembled trees, but with undulating, membrane-like canopies that pulsated rhythmically. Nothing in the survival manual covered this, he muttered, adjusting his course toward the strange forest. It offered the only visible shelter from the unforgiving terrain. As he approached the tree-like structures, his motion tracker beeped urgently. Something large was moving through the forest ahead. Tristan took cover behind a rocky outcropping, weapon ready. What emerged from between the pulsating trees defied easy description. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, with a segmented exoskeleton and 6 limbs that ended in wicked, serrated appendages. Its elongated head featured multiple sensory stalks and a vertical mouth lined with grinding plates rather than teeth. Most disturbing of all was its behavior. The creature moved with frenzied, erratic motions, stopping occasionally to emit a high-pitched keening sound that made Tristan's helmet audio dampeners kick in. It was clearly agitated, and Tristan remembered the database warning about the planet's mating season. He remained perfectly still, hoping the creature would pass him by. But luck wasn't on his side. A sudden gust of wind shifted direction, carrying his unfamiliar scent directly to the creature's sensory stalks. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. The alien reared up on its hind limbs, its exoskeleton flaring to reveal vibrant patterns underneath, and charged directly at Tristan's position. Training took over. Tristan rolled from cover, his pulse rifle tracking the charging alien. 3 precise shots hit their mark, 2 to the creature's midsection and 1 to a joint in its forward limbs. The alien stumbled, ichor spraying from its wounds, but didn't fall. Tristan backpedaled rapidly, firing controlled bursts. The creature's resilience was astounding. It absorbed damage that would have felled any Earth predator. Only when Tristan managed a lucky shot to what appeared to be a neural cluster at the base of its sensory stalks did the beast finally collapse. Heart pounding, Tristan reloaded his weapon, painfully aware that the firefight had depleted a significant portion of his limited ammunition. Worse, the creature's death throes had generated sounds that echoed across the landscape, sounds that might attract more of its kind. He needed to move quickly, but as he prepared to continue his journey, new motion contacts appeared on his tracker. Multiple signatures, approaching rapidly from the direction of the forest. Out of the frying pan, Tristan muttered, seeking higher ground for a defensive position. But what emerged from the forest wasn't what he expected. They walked upright on 2 powerful legs, their bodies covered in iridescent scales that shifted color with their movements. Their faces featured 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern above what appeared to be respiratory slits rather than a nose. Each carried weapons, spears tipped with crystalline points that hummed with energy and curved blades at their sides. They were clearly intelligent, moving with tactical precision as they surrounded the fallen creature and then turned their attention to Tristan. Their leader, distinguished by elaborate markings on its armor and a crest of spine-like projections on its head, approached cautiously. Tristan slowly raised his hands, the universal gesture of peaceful intent. "I mean no harm," he said, knowing they couldn't understand his words, but hoping his tone would convey his meaning. The leader barked something in a language of clicks and musical tones. 2 warriors immediately flanked Tristan, their weapons trained on him. The universal translator in Tristan's helmet attempted to process their language, but could only manage fragmentary translations. Unknown creature. Weapon capability. Bring to settlement. He was being taken prisoner. That much was clear. Resistance would be futile. There were at least a dozen warriors, all armed and clearly familiar with combat. Tristan allowed them to take his pulse rifle, though they left his survival pack intact after inspecting it. As they marched him away from the crash site, Tristan noticed subtle details about his captors. Their scale pattern seemed unusually vibrant, and many warriors bore fresh scars or ritualistic markings on their bodies. Most tellingly, there was a palpable tension in the air, a nervous energy that manifested in quick, aggressive movements and frequent territorial displays, between individuals. The translator picked up scattered phrases from their conversations. Cycle intensity increasing. Royal selection approaching. Stronger than it appears. They were traversing a landscape that grew increasingly cultivated as they progressed. The wild, chaotic terrain gave way to deliberately cleared pathways and eventually to croplands where strange, bulbous plants were being tended by more of the scaled beings. After several hours of marching, they crested a ridge, and Tristan saw their destination, a sprawling settlement built into the side of a massive cliff face. Structures of stone and some metallic substance formed interconnected chambers and towers, with bridges spanning natural chasms. It was primitive compared to Alliance technology, but undeniably the product of an advanced civilization. The warriors escorted Tristan through the settlement, where other Relorians stopped to stare at the alien visitor. Many displayed visible reactions, some recoiling in apparent disgust, others approaching aggressively before being warded off by the warriors. They brought him to what appeared to be a central fortress, its entrance flanked by massive statues depicting warrior figures in triumphant poses. Inside, after traversing several security checkpoints, Tristan was led into a vast chamber with a domed ceiling that captured and amplified sound in unusual ways. At the far end, seated upon an elevated platform, was clearly the leader of this society. Even without cultural context, Tristan recognized royalty when he saw it. She was larger than the other Elorians, her scales shifting in patterns of deep purple and gold. A crest of elongated spines framed her face, adorned with what appeared to be precious minerals. Her four eyes fixed on Tristan with unmistakable intelligence and curiosity. The warrior leader approached her throne, kneeling in a posture of submission before rising to give what Tristan assumed was a report. The translator caught fragments. Found near forest boundary. Killed mature hunter beast. Unknown species, unknown origins. The royal figure rose from her throne, descending the steps with fluid grace. She approached Tristan, circling him slowly, examining him with intense scrutiny. Up close, he could see that her scales weren't simply colored but seemed to pulse with bioluminescence, creating hypnotic patterns. She spoke directly to him, and the translator struggled to interpret. I am Xanthea, royal successor over Laura. You are not known to us. Your presence during sacred cycle is concerning. Tristan attempted to communicate, speaking slowly to give the translator the best chance to convert his words. I'm Tristan Reed, scout pilot from the Galactic Alliance. My ship crashed. I mean no harm to your people. Xanthea's head tilted, the bioluminescent patterns on her scales shifting rapidly. Alliance. Old records speak of this. Long cycles passed. She made a gesture, and one of her attendants brought forward a device that appeared surprisingly technological compared to their otherwise seemingly primitive society. She manipulated controls on the device, and it projected holographic symbols, an ancient communication protocol that Tristan's translator recognized and adapted to. With the enhanced translation, communication became clearer. You have arrived during our sacred mating cycle, Xanthea explained, her four eyes intently studying his reactions. All creatures on Relora are affected. Aggression rises. Territorial claims strengthen. Even my people struggle with the biological imperatives. She circled him again, this time reaching out to touch his environmental suit with evident fascination. Your arrival is problematic. Some will see you as a threat, others as an opportunity. Before Tristan could respond, she turned to her guards and issued commands. Take the off-worlder to the isolation quarters in the Royal Wing. Provide sustenance compatible with its biology. I will study this creature further. As the guards led him away, Tristan caught a final glimpse of Xanthea. Something in her gaze had shifted, a predatory interest that made him distinctly uncomfortable. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was no longer just a diplomatic incident to be managed, but something she personally wanted to possess. The isolation quarters were surprisingly comfortable, a spacious chamber with furnishings that, while alien in design, had been hastily adapted for humanoid anatomy. The atmosphere had been adjusted to approximate Earth standard, allowing Tristan to remove his helmet for the first time since the crash. Food and water were provided, along with what appeared to be primitive medical supplies. Tristan used his survival kit's analyzer to confirm they were non-toxic before cautiously consuming them. The nutrition was strange but palatable, a paste with a sweet, mineral taste that his analyzer indicated contained sufficient proteins and carbohydrates for human consumption. Through a transparent barrier, Tristan could observe the comings and goings in the adjacent corridor. The Relorians moved with increasing agitation as time passed. Warriors frequently engaged in what appeared to be dominance displays, ritual confrontations that stopped just short of actual combat. Even the servants and attendants seemed affected, their scale patterns flashing in rapid, almost seizure-inducing pulses when they encountered others. The enhanced translator, now synchronized with the Relorian device, allowed Tristan to understand snippets of conversation. The princess becomes more selective as the cycle peaks. 3 challengers already rejected. Unprecedented to delay the claiming. This long, on the 3rd day of his confinement, Princess Xanthea herself arrived at his quarters, accompanied by only 2 guards who remained at a respectful distance. She wore elaborate ceremonial armor that accentuated the now brilliant patterns of her scales. "You have adapted well to our environment," she observed, studying him through the barrier. "Our archives contained limited information on human physiology. I feared you might perish before we could properly communicate." "I'm resilient," Tristan replied, approaching the barrier. "Thank you for the accommodations, but I need to understand my situation. Am I a prisoner? A guest? When can I attempt to contact my people?" Xanthea's scales rippled in what the translator interpreted as amusement. Such directness. Refreshing. She made a gesture, and the barrier between them deactivated. "Kulme, I would show you our world," Tristan Reed of the Alliance. It was the first time she had used his name, and something in her intonation made it sound like a claim of ownership. She led him through corridors and chambers that revealed the complex society of the Relorians. They passed training grounds where warriors practiced with both primitive weapons and surprisingly advanced energy tools. Artisans worked with metals and strange crystal formations, creating both functional and decorative items. "We maintain the old ways alongside the technological knowledge preserved from before the Great Regression," Xanthea explained. "My ancestors once commanded the stars, like your alliance. Now we fight to maintain what knowledge remains while surviving Relora's increasingly hostile cycles." They reached an observation platform overlooking the sprawling settlement. From this vantage point, Tristan could see the true scale of their civilization, a network of interconnected communities built into the natural formations of the landscape, protected by both walls and energy fields. "Beyond our territories lie other clans," Xanthea continued. "Some allied, many hostile. The mating cycle intensifies conflicts that simmer throughout the year. Resources are contested. Bloodlines are challenged." She turned to face him directly, her 4 eyes focused intensely on his. "Do you understand what the mating cycle means, off-worlder?" Tristan nodded cautiously. "A period of reproductive activity accompanied by heightened aggression and territorial behavior, common in many species. It is more than that for Relorians," she said, stepping closer. "It is when we determine the future of our bloodlines. When royal succession is confirmed through ritual and challenge. When claims are made that bind our society together." Her proximity was unsettling. Tristan could detect an unfamiliar scent emanating from her scales, something his human brain registered as simultaneously threatening and alluring. "As royal successor, my claim is the most significant of the cycle," she continued. "My choice affects the stability of our entire territory. Traditionally, I would select from champions who prove their worth through ritual combat and demonstrations of lineage quality." Tristan took a careful step back. "I'm sensing there's something you're not telling me." Xanthea's scales flashed in patterns that the translator couldn't interpret. "You are perceptive." "Yes. Since your arrival, I have been affected by your presence. Your difference. Your strength in killing the forest predator. Your strange biology. She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. I am considering making a claim upon you. The translation came through with unmistakable clarity, leaving Tristan momentarily speechless. When he found his voice, it was tight with tension. And what exactly does that mean? In its simplest form, a claim is a declaration of ownership and bond, she explained. If I claim you, you become mine, protected by royal authority, integrated into our highest social tier. Ownership. Tristan's voice rose in disbelief. Where I come from, sentient beings aren't property. Perhaps ownership is an inadequate translation, Xanthea conceded. Bond partner will be closer. Mate select. Life companion. Her scales rippled in patterns that seemed almost uncertain. I do not make this consideration lightly. There are significant factions who believe claiming an off-worlder would weaken our bloodline. Others who see the potential for new strength. Before Tristan could respond, alarms echoed throughout the settlement. Xanthea's posture changed instantly, her body tensing as she barked orders to nearby guards. The translator struggled with the rapid speech, but Tristan caught enough to understand the situation. Border breach, Carven clan warriors, heavy weapons, approaching Central District. Xanthea turned to him, her expression now fully that of a military commander rather than a curious royal. We are under attack. The Carven clan has long contested our territory, and now they make a bold move during cycle height. She hesitated, then added, they may have learned of your presence. Off-world technology is highly valued. Tristan calculated his options rapidly. I can help defend your settlement. I have combat training. She studied him for a moment, then nodded sharply. You will remain with my personal guard. If you attempt to flee or betray us, you will not survive the wilderness beyond our walls. She signaled to an attendant who brought forward Tristan's pulse rifle, confiscated upon his capture. As they moved toward the command center, Xanthea added, your assistance in this conflict will be remembered when I make my final decision regarding the claim. The central command chamber buzzed with activity as warrior leaders reported positions and coordinated defenses. Holographic displays showed the settlement's perimeter and the advancing enemy forces, another clan of Relorians whose scale patterns featured predominantly crimson and black colorations. Tristan studied the tactical situation. The Carven clan forces had breached the outer perimeter by disabling a section of the energy barrier. They were advancing through the agricultural district, using the large cultivation structures as cover. Their approach is too coordinated, he observed to Xanthea. This isn't an opportunistic raid. No, she agreed grimly. This is a calculated strike. Sathric Carven leads them, a warlord who has twice before challenged my right to succession. Her scales darkened with what Tristan now recognized as anger. He seeks to capture you and your technology, then use both to overthrow my clan's rule. A senior warrior approached, displaying deference to Xanthea before speaking. Highness, our forward units engage the enemy, but Carven brings siege weapons we have not encountered before. They breach our secondary defenses faster than anticipated. Tristan studied the holographic display, noting the enemy's movements. They're using a pincer formation, splitting your defenders while concentrating their heavy weapons at the center. Classic siege tactic. Xanthea looked at him with renewed interest. You understand warfare. All Alliance scouts receive combat training. We're often the first to encounter hostile forces. Tristan pointed to key positions on the display. If you concentrate your forces here and here, you can funnel them into a killing zone. Meanwhile, a small strike team could circle behind and target their command position. The senior warrior bristled, scales flaring in challenge. We do not take tactical advice from unknown creatures during sacred cycle. Xanthea silenced him with a gesture. Commander Vral, your objection is noted, but I have studied the archives. Alliance military doctrine was respected even by our ancestors. She turned to Tristan. You will join the strike team. Show us if your combat abilities match your tactical understanding. Minutes later, Tristan found himself moving through maintenance tunnels beneath the settlement with a squad of elite Relorian warriors. Commander Vral led them, his hostility toward Tristan evident in every movement. "When we emerge, we will be behind the Carven advance," Vral explained tersely. "Their leadership will be guarded, but distracted by the frontal assault. We strike fast, eliminate Sathric Carven, and retreat." Tristan checked his pulse rifle's charge. "And if we can't reach Carven?" Vral's scales flickered in what the translator interpreted as grim humor. "Then we die with honor, and the princess selects a more worthy claim." They emerged in a section of the settlement already damaged by the fighting. The sounds of energy weapons and physical combat echoed from several streets away. Vral signaled, and the squad moved with impressive stealth toward the enemy command position. The Carven forces had established their command in a repurposed communal hall, with guards posted at all entrances. Tristan observed their patterns, noting a vulnerability in their perimeter. "There," he whispered to Vral, indicating a maintenance access point. "That's our entry point. They've left it with minimal coverage." The commander studied it, then nodded reluctantly. "Your eyes see differently than ours." "Useful." He signaled the squad to reposition. Using a timed distraction, a small explosive device placed by one of the warriors, they breached the command center's perimeter. Inside, chaos erupted as Vral's squad engaged the Carven guards in close-quarters combat. Tristan had his first glimpse of Sathric Carven, a massive Relorian with battle-scarred scales and cybernetic enhancements visible along one side of his body. He was shouting orders, directing the battle from a central position surrounded by elite guards. The fight was brutal and fast. Relorian warriors on both sides moved with incredible speed, their natural weapons, retractable claws and razor-edge scale ridges, as deadly as their manufactured ones. Tristan provided covering. Fire with his pulse rifle, its energy blasts cutting through the Carven ranks with surgical precision. Commander Vral fought his way towards Sathric, engaging the warlord in what appeared to be ritual combat, a one-on-one confrontation with traditional bladed weapons. Tristan focused on keeping the other Carven warriors at bay, allowing the duel to proceed. The battle seemed to be turning in their favor when a massive explosion rocked the building. Part of the ceiling collapsed, separating Tristan from Vral's duel with Sathric. Through the dust and debris, he glimpsed the commander falling, a fatal wound visible across his torso. With their commander down and reinforcements pouring in, the strike team was in imminent danger of being overwhelmed. Tristan made a split-second decision, firing his pulse rifle at structural supports to create a controlled collapse that would block the incoming Carven warriors. "Fall back," he shouted to the remaining strike team members, the translator converting his words to their language. "Defensive retreat to position Alpha." To his surprise, they obeyed, perhaps recognizing the tactical necessity or simply responding to the authority in his voice. They fought their way back to the tunnel entrance, sustaining casualties but managing to extract most of the team. As they regrouped in the maintenance tunnel, one of the senior warriors looked at Tristan with newfound respect. "You fight well for an off-worlder." Commander Vral died with honor, but his death will not be in vain if we bring this intelligence to the princess. The intelligence was grim. Sathric Carven had survived, and his forces were advancing on the central fortress. The strike team had disrupted his command structure, but not enough to halt the assault. Worse, they had confirmed rumors that the Carven clan possessed advanced weapons technology, possibly salvaged from other crashed vessels or ancient caches. When they reached the command center, they found Xanthea personally directing the defense, her ceremonial armor replaced with functional battle gear. She received the news of Vral's death with stoic dignity, but her scales darkened momentarily in what Tristan now recognized as mourning. "The Carven forces pushed toward the royal wing," she informed Tristan. "Our defense is thin. I believe their primary objective is you and your technology. Sathric knows that possessing alliance knowledge would give him dominance over all clans." Tristan studied the tactical display. "Then we use that against him. Make him think he can capture me, and lead him into a trap." Xanthea's scales flashed with alarm. "You would offer yourself as bait? The risk is considerable." "So is the alternative," Tristan replied grimly. "Your people are dying defending me. Let me help end this. After a tense discussion, a plan was formed. Tristan would appear to flee the command center toward the landing platform where his crashed ship's salvageable parts had been stored. Carvin's forces would inevitably pursue, drawn by the promise of off-world technology. Meanwhile, Xanthia's elite guards would prepare an ambush along the route. As final preparations were made, Xanthia drew Tristan aside, away from her advisors. "There is something you should know before you risk yourself for my people," she said, her voice lowered. "My interest in you is not merely political or strategic. The mating cycle affects judgment, intensifies certain attractions." Tristan met her gaze steadily. "I suspected as much, but we can discuss that after we survive this attack." Her scales rippled in what he now recognized as amusement. "Practical. I appreciate that." She reached out, touching his arm with surprising gentleness. "Nevertheless, know that if we prevail, I intend to formally claim you before the council. It will offer you protection no other status could provide." Before Tristan could respond, alarms blared. The Carven forces had breached the inner perimeter sooner than expected. It was time to execute their plan. The ensuing battle tested both Tristan's combat skills and Xanthia's leadership. The trap was partially successful. Carven forces pursued Tristan as expected, but in greater numbers than anticipated. The ambush inflicted heavy casualties on the attackers, but didn't stop them completely. Fighting retreat after fighting retreat, Tristan and a dwindling number of Relorian defenders were pushed back toward the royal chambers. Xanthia fought alongside them, her combat prowess impressive, a combination of natural weapons, traditional bladed weapons, and energy weapons that seemed to respond specifically to her touch. They were cornered in the throne room, preparing for a last stand, when Tristan's emergency communicator, largely ignored since the crash, emitted a burst of static followed by a clear voice. "Scout Tristan Reed, this is Alliance Rescue Vessel Hyperion. We have locked onto your emergency beacon. Prepare for extraction. ETA 5 minutes." Hope surged through Tristan, quickly followed by conflicted emotions as he glanced at Xanthia, who had heard the transmission. Her expression was complex, relief mixed with what appeared to be profound disappointment. Before they could discuss it, the doors to the throne room shuddered under heavy impact. The Carven forces had arrived for their final assault. "Hold them back," Xanthia commanded her remaining warriors. "We need only a few minutes." The battle that followed was desperate and vicious. Tristan emptied his pulse rifle's charge into the advancing enemy, then switched to a Relorian blade when ammunition was exhausted. Alongside him, Xanthia moved with lethal grace, her scales now pulsing with patterns that seemed to hypnotize and disorient her opponents. Just as their defenses were about to collapse, the ceiling of the throne room demolished in a controlled explosion. Through the opening descended an Alliance drop ship, its weapons targeting the Carven forces with precision strikes that forced them to retreat. Armored Alliance Marines deployed from the vessel, securing a perimeter around Tristan and the surviving Relorians. Their commander approached, visor retracting to reveal a stern-faced woman. "Scout Reed, your extraction is authorized. We detected multi-faction conflict and received clearance for limited intervention to retrieve Alliance personnel." Tristan nodded, but stepped toward Xanthia rather than the drop ship. "Commander, the situation is complex. The Relorian royal forces saved my life and protected me at great cost. Their settlement is under attack by a hostile faction that wants Alliance technology." The commander assessed the situation rapidly. "Our orders allow for stabilization operations to prevent technology transfer to hostile forces. We can provide temporary support." With the Alliance forces bolstering the defense, the tide turned dramatically. Precision strikes from the drop ship targeted the Carven heavy weapons, while Marine units helped secure the perimeter. Within an hour, reports confirmed that Sathric Carven had ordered a full retreat, his forces decimated and his opportunity lost. In the aftermath, as Alliance medics treated the wounded and engineers assessed the settlement's defenses, Tristan found himself facing the most difficult decision of his life. The Hyperion's commander had made it clear. This was his extraction window. Once they departed, Alliance protocol would classify R'hllora as a restricted zone due to the ongoing internal conflicts. No return would be authorized for standard personnel. Xanthia found him on the observation platform, where she had first explained the concept of the claim to him. Night had fallen, and the twin moons of R'hllora cast an ethereal light across the landscape. "Your people are formidable allies," she said, approaching. "With their assistance, the Carven threat is neutralized for now. Sathric's failure will weaken his position among the rival clans." "They're preparing to leave," Tristan replied, "and they expect me to go with them." Xanthia's scales dimmed slightly. "Of course, you would return to your kind. It is the natural order." Tristan turned to face her directly. "Is it? Your concept of the claim has been on my mind. At first, I found it primitive, the idea of one sentient being claiming another. But I've come to see that it's more complex than that. It is a bond," she explained. "In our oldest traditions, before the Great Regression, it was a partnership between equals with complementary strengths. Only later did it evolve ritual elements of dominance. And if you were to claim me," her scales brightened with unmistakable interest, "you would be recognized as my chosen consort, protected by royal decree. No R'hllorian would dare challenge your status." She hesitated, then added, "And you would stand beside me as I lead my people into a new era, one that might include renewed contact with the Alliance." Tristan's communicator beeped, a 1-minute warning for final boarding. "If I stay," he said slowly, "I'd be abandoning my duty, my assignment." "If you leave," she countered, "you abandon an opportunity to forge a connection between our peoples that transcends formal diplomacy." Her scales pulsed with emotion. "And you abandon whatever has begun between us, something neither fully explained by your biology nor mine." Tristan made his decision. He contacted the Hyperion's commander, requesting a direct communication with Alliance headquarters. To his surprise, it was granted immediately. In a brief but intense negotiation, Tristan proposed an unprecedented arrangement. He would remain on R'hllora as an unofficial Alliance liaison, establishing diplomatic relations with the R'hllorian royal clan. In exchange, he requested supply drops and communication protocols to maintain contact with the Alliance. After tense deliberation, Alliance Command agreed conditionally. The unique opportunity to establish relations with a previously uncontacted civilization outweighed protocol concerns. Tristan would be reclassified as a diplomatic pioneer rather than a deserter. When the Hyperion departed, Tristan stood beside Xanthia in the central plaza of the settlement. The gathered R'hllorians watched with a mixture of awe and apprehension as the massive ship rose into the atmosphere. "So," Xanthia said when the ship had disappeared from view, "you have chosen to remain." "I have," Tristan confirmed, "though I'm still not entirely comfortable with the concept of being claimed." Her scales rippled in amusement. "Then perhaps we can negotiate the terms of this particular claim. After all, as you have demonstrated, adaptation is the key to survival." 3 days later, before the assembled council of elders and clan representatives, Princess Xanthia formally announced her claim upon Tristan Reed of the Alliance. The ceremony combined ancient R'hllorian traditions with modifications that acknowledged Tristan's foreign status and diplomatic role. Rather than the traditional submission rituals, Xanthia and Tristan exchanged symbolic tokens. She presented him with a ceremonial blade that marked him as royal consort, while he offered a modified Alliance communicator that symbolized the connection between their worlds. The biological component of the claim was more intimate. In a private chamber following the public ceremony, Xanthia explained the final step, a mutual exchange of genetic material that would create a biochemical bond, allowing Tristan to better tolerate R'hlora's atmosphere and giving Xanthia insight into human physiology. "This is traditionally accomplished through blood exchange," she explained, "though other methods have been employed throughout our history." Her scales flushed with patterns that the translator interpreted as both embarrassment and invitation. The bond, once established, proved more profound than either had anticipated. Tristan found himself increasingly attuned to Relorian biochemistry, able to detect subtle shifts in Xanthia's scale patterns that even the translator couldn't interpret. Similarly, Xanthia demonstrated an unprecedented understanding of human emotional states, anticipating Tristan's reactions before he expressed them. In the months that followed, Relora slowly transformed from a hostile prison to a challenging new home. The settlement recovered from the Carvan attack, rebuilding with improved defenses, incorporating a blend of Relorian and Alliance techniques. Periodic supply drops from the Alliance provided Tristan with essential human medical supplies and communication equipment, while also introducing carefully vetted technologies that the Royal Council approved for integration. Sathra Carvan and his clan maintained an uneasy distance, their defeat having diminished their standing among the rival factions. Intelligence reports suggested they were rebuilding their forces, but direct confrontation seemed unlikely in the immediate future. More significantly, other Relorian clans began sending delegations to the royal settlement, curious about the off-worlder who had been claimed by their princess and the alliance he represented. What had begun as scandal, a royal heir choosing a foreign consort, was gradually transforming into political advantage as Xanthia leveraged the unique situation to strengthen her position among the competing factions. "They come ostensibly to evaluate you," Xanthia remarked after a particularly tense meeting with representatives from a traditionally isolationist mountain clan. "But what they really seek is access to Alliance knowledge without submitting to royal authority." "And what will you offer them?" Tristan asked, reviewing security protocols for the upcoming diplomatic exchange. Her scales rippled in what he now recognized as strategic consideration. "Limited technology, sharing in exchange for formal recognition of our primacy. The old ways of blood conflict have diminished our people for too long. We should be reaching for the stars again, not fighting over territories on a single world." Tristan nodded, impressed by her vision. That aligns with Alliance diplomatic principles. Controlled technological advancement in exchange for peaceful unification. "I learned from a good teacher," she said, her scales flushing with affection. "Though I maintain that the claiming was the correct approach despite your initial resistance. I've come to appreciate its merits," Tristan admitted with a smile. "Though I'm still not entirely convinced it wasn't just an elaborate way to keep me from leaving." Her four eyes blinked in sequence, the Relorian equivalent of laughter. "Perhaps a little of both. Effective governance requires both tradition and innovation." As the next mating season approached, signs of its influence appeared throughout the settlement. Younger Relorians engaged in increasingly elaborate courtship displays, while the elder council members retreated to ceremonial isolation to maintain objectivity during the biologically charged period. Tristan found that he too was not immune to the seasonal effects. The biochemical bond established during the claiming had attuned his physiology to Relorn cycles. He experienced heightened awareness, increased energy, and an intensified connection to Xanthia that transcended their already close bond. They stood together on the highest point of the royal settlement, watching as the unique astronomical alignment that triggered the mating season began. 3 moons converging in a rare syzygy that bathed Relora in amplified light. "The first cycle we faced was one of conflict and claiming," Xanthia said, her scales glowing with iridescent patterns in the moonlight. "This one will be of creation and renewal." Tristan took her hand, their fingers intertwining despite their anatomical differences. "From hostile survival to something much more," he agreed. "Though I imagine Alliance xenobiologists would have a field day documenting all this." "Perhaps someday they will," she replied, "when Relora is ready to fully rejoin the interstellar community. Until then, we have a unique role as bridge between worlds." Below them, the settlement hummed with activity. Relorians preparing for the seasonal celebrations, Alliance supply drones being unloaded by a mixed team of technicians, and diplomatic envoys arriving from distant clans. What had begun as a desperate crash landing on a hostile planet had transformed into something unprecedented, a new beginning for both a lost human pilot and an alien princess, and possibly for both their civilizations. As the ceremonial drums began to echo through the settlement, announcing the official commencement of the cycle festivities, Xanthea turned to Tristan with all four eyes gleaming with emotion. "Are you ready, consort?" she asked formally, though her scale patterns conveyed more intimate meanings. Tristan smiled, the translator no longer necessary between them. "Lead on, princess. I claimed this world as my prison once. Now you've claimed me as your partner. It seems a fair exchange." Together they descended toward the celebration, representatives of a union that neither had sought but both now cherished. A union that promised to reshape the destiny of an entire world and expand the understanding of what connections were possible across the stars. The hostile planet of Tristan's crash landing had become home, and the alien princess who had claimed him had become the center of a new life he could never have imagined when a scout ship first plummeted through Relora's turbulent atmosphere. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, claimed by choice rather than circumstance.